Hello and welcome to the MyHeritage webinar series. I'm Miriam Pierre-Louis, your host, broadcasting to you live from Eastern Massachusetts. Today we have Anne Young, who is with us live in Australia for her class, Finding New Cousins and Building Your Family Tree with DNA. Thanks to Anne and thanks to all of you for registering for today's live webinar. So wherever and whenever you are, glad to have you with us. And now to introduce our speaker, Anne Young. Anne has been researching her family history for 30 years, and she has been blogging for 8 years. Most of her family arrived in Australia during the 19th century gold rushes. However, her mother's family only came to Australia from Germany after World War II. Please put your virtual hands together and let's give Anne Young a nice, warm webinar. Welcome, Anne. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's early, isn't it? It's 4 o'clock in the morning your time?
It's 4 o'clock in the morning my time. It's very early, but I've had a cup of coffee and some breakfast and I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to switch over to your screen. You should see the share my screen there.
Very good. And there we go. And how's that?
That looks great. You might need to click the title slide once to get it to move forward, but otherwise you're all set to go.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we go back now.
Okay.
Good morning from Australia, and thank you to MyHeritage and Legacy Family Tree webinars for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you, Marion, for your kind words of introduction. DNA can help confirm the documentary evidence for your family tree and allow you to connect with cousins who share inherited DNA. And these connections can help consolidate and extend your family tree. I'm going to look with you at my husband Greg's DNA results at MyHeritage and take you through what I find when I explore the results. The DNA you inherited from your forebears is, in a sense, another document. And as with any document, you look for clues in the document and seek evidence to support your hypothesis about the new information. DNA is added to the evidence I've used to build our family tree. To date, I've not found any DNA-based evidence which suggests my document-based tree is inaccurate. However, I've been able to extend our tree using DNA evidence supported by documents that I found after the DNA evidence pointed me in the right direction. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So firstly, where am I and some of our background to our family history. I'm in Victoria, which is in southeastern Australia, and I'm where the green arrow is in the city of Ballarat. And it's northwest of Melbourne, which I've shown you with a purple arrow. City of Ballarat was founded in the time of the gold rushes in the 1850s, and our families were here when it was founded, and it was just mud and people digging in the river. Most of our family came to Victoria in the middle of the 19th century, many of them following the gold rushes. Gold mining was hard work, and I've got a picture here of a miner and lots of colleagues in the background from 1861, and it's a fascinating photograph, and that's what our forebears were doing, digging gold out of the ground. And it was Victoria's population grew by 4 times within 2 years and things like that. An enormous number of people came. So first, Greg's family tree. And this lovely fan chart was generated through MyHeritage. And I compiled this tree first by talking to Greg's parents while they were alive about what they knew. And then going back in time, we looked at a variety of documents: birth, marriage and death registrations, wills, shipping records, and more recently newspaper reports. Newspaper reports are absolute goldmine for extending your family tree. Lots of people have birth, death and marriage notices. They might have had a skirmish with the law, been to a social event, all sorts of things. So this is a 5-generation chart generated by MyHeritage, and it shows Greg's 16 great-grandparents and his more recent forebears. 13 of Greg's great-great-grandparents were immigrants who came to Australia from either England or Ireland. Most of Greg's great-great-grandparents came to Australia as young adults at the beginning of the Victorian gold rushes. There are a couple of exceptions. So with the blue arrow, there's Caroline Clark, and she was born in New South Wales. And so 1835 is pretty early. Her family weren't probably convicts, because convicts are really well documented, and her family weren't well documented. So we don't know when they came to Australia, but they were probably free settlers. Most recent immigrant was Henry Dawson, shown with the green arrow, and he came in about 1888 as a young man, so after the gold rushes. But the rest, from obviously Henry's parents, all arrived in Australia in the 1850s. And to the right is a photograph of Greg's great-grandfather. A copy was passed to us by a cousin over 30 years ago. Collaborating with cousins in your family history research can bring extra knowledge and such benefits as photographs and other documents. I've gained an awful lot by talking to cousins. So, connecting with cousins. One of the ways, of course, is with your DNA results. And what I'm going to do, though, is this is a beginner session. So I'm going to start from the very beginning about what you'll see with MyHeritage's DNA system, website, and so on. So these are my husband Greg's results at MyHeritage. I'm going to briefly have a look with you at the initial screens and take you down. And one of the important things to note is MyHeritage is really good at having really long screens, and you need to scroll down. So with the green arrow, I'm showing you the scroll bar to the side, and we're only at the very top of what's up the top. So it can be sometimes quite easy to just say, oh, I can see a screen, and then move on. You actually have to scroll down. So through this presentation, I'm using screenshots, and I'm not doing it live because I'm pixelating living people to keep them private, except for cousins I've talked to who've said, yes, you can share information about us. And I've used the green arrows to point out things on the screen. If there's a screen on the right, it's what's happening below or what's happening as a pop-up. So I hope that's not too confusing. My husband was confused when I talked him through this, so I hope other people aren't. So gaudy green arrow, we're only at the top of the screen, and you need to scroll down further. The overview screen shows you a summary of your ethnicity, the number of DNA matches sorted into close family, extended family, and more distant cousins, the locations of Greg's matches. Most of those who share DNA come from the USA, as that's, of course, a very large population with many people involved in genetic genealogy. They're mostly more distant cousins to Greg, and the shared ancestry is back in England or Ireland. So they're living in America, but our common ancestors are back in the UK. And also the ethnicities of Greg's matches. And so the largest number of matches are associated with his Irish, Scottish, and Welsh ethnicity. So no surprises particularly. So if I go back to that overview screen, I can click, I'm missing a page. Okay. When you explore your MyHeritage DNA results, you'll see a screen like this one. And if I click where the green arrow is on the extended family, I can get a list of matches who are in that category. So I'm getting 17 DNA matches after I've clicked anywhere in that green area. So in MyHeritage, you need to click on the screen, and sometimes it's not always obvious that you can click here. But so I clicked where I pointed at with the green arrow, and what I popped up was a list of matches, 17 matches, and you're seeing the top 4. And these matches all share quite a lot of DNA with Greg, from 340 centimorgans to 64 centimorgans. So in this talk, I'm not going to go into details of what a centimorgan of DNA is, because it's not quite so simple, but the basic idea is the more centimorgans you share, the more closely you are related. The 17 DNA matches in this list range from Greg's father's first cousin, Greg's first cousin once removed, to a possible 4th cousin. I know how most, but not all, of the 17 people are related to Greg. Okay, I've gone back to the screen, and now I'm going to click on Ireland, and I'm going to be able to see all the matches that we have who are living now in Ireland. So that might be of interest, because maybe there's some people who are living still in the area where Greg's forebears came from. So to the left, what I've got is the matches who live in Ireland. And you can see down the screen, there's 3 matches there. And we can see some information on that about the first one. They've got a tree with 4,600 people, and it's managed by somebody from Canada. The ancestral surnames for Greg that are shared with Greg include Smith, and yes, his Smiths came from Ireland. And the generic ancestral places include Ireland, which is not surprising. The next person has 45 people in her tree, and the third person, they include a shared ancestral surname of Murray. I went back and did that again and had a look at matches from Australia, and Greg's got 337 matches who are in Australia, and they're not surprisingly close cousins. In fact, 3 of them I know very well. And 2, one of them I actually administered the kit. Another one, her name appears in my family tree, so it's quite straightforward. What you're doing here is you're filtering your results. And I've shown you with the green arrow up the top that, for example, you can see the filters along the top row immediately above the match names. And so I can show you that on the left-hand side, I've filtered for Ireland. On the right-hand side, I've filtered for Australia. You can go from this screen or similar screens to review your DNA match, and we'll do that in a moment. So in the bottom right-hand corner, we're going to have a look at Pearl's, the match that Greg has with Pearl by clicking on the Review DNA match. But firstly, I'd like you to introduce you back to the family, well, in fact, the children of George Young. So I've got 2 photos received also from our cousin. And the one on the left is Greg's great-grandfather, John Young. And he's photographed here with his 2 children and his 2 stepchildren. And Greg's grandfather, Cecil, is sitting on his father's knee. Cecil was born in July 1898, and his mother died in childbirth. And the photograph was probably taken in early 1899. And the photograph on the right is of one of John's siblings. There were 13 children altogether in the Young family. And this one is of Maria and her husband, John Llewellyn Tunks. Maria's on the left of the photo. And sitting on John Tunks's knee in the middle is a little girl called Ivy. Ivy was born in 1901, and Ivy is Pearl's mother. And we're going to look at, in a moment, at Pearl's DNA results. So I think this photo was taken in 1905, and John and Maria had 12 children, but there are 10 children shown in this photo, which helps us to date it. So, Pearl. We've been in correspondence with Pearl for a lot of years and exchanged her family history, met for lunch, and we're friends on Facebook, and I enjoy her jokes. I didn't know she was going to research her own genetic genealogy, and it was a delightful surprise when her name turned up on the list of Greg's DNA matches. It was also really useful because it's really important to go from known matches to unknown matches. So if you know a match, that helps you to discover other cousins and how they might fit into your tree. Cousin Pearl kindly agreed that I could discuss her and Greg's DNA match today. So the first thing to notice is that immediately under the names, MyHeritage tells you how much DNA you share and gives you an estimated relationship. And so we'll have a look at that. Pearl and Greg share 163 centimorgans, and MyHeritage has estimated that they have a relationship of first cousin twice removed to second cousin twice removed. And you can click on an extremely tiny question mark, which I've highlighted with the green arrow, and you'll get a pop-up showing the range of possible relationships and how you might be connected. It's a very nice diagram with possible relationships based on the amount of DNA you share, highlighted in purple. And I've highlighted the actual relationship of Greg and Pearl with the green arrow. So the purple dots are all the probable, very extremely likely connections that you might be. They don't take into account half relationships, but so they assume that you share two common ancestors. This diagram can be really useful if you're trying to work out how a new match might be related to you. You can see what generation you should be looking for, the most recent common ancestors. In the case of Pearl and Greg, they're his great-great-grandparents, so George and Caroline Young. I really recommend when you're exploring on MyHeritage, you click on those small question marks, as there's a lot of useful information behind them, but they are really small, so it's not always obvious that you might want to go there. Moving down the screen, and we come to a theory of family relativity. So not every match will have a theory of family relativity, but MyHeritage are rolling out more of those theories, and they are generated by MyHeritage using algorithms from their collections of billions of historical records and family tree profiles, and they give you a lead which may, or several leads, which may help explain the relationship between you and your matches. So they're a theory, not definite. So I clicked on the purple button on the screen, so the screen where we are at the moment is on the left-hand side. I clicked on the button, and what I got was the new screen on the right-hand side. We've been corresponding with Pearl for many years, and not surprisingly, our family trees are well aligned and well documented. MyHeritage used only our two trees to come up with this theory, but I've seen more convoluted paths which have used several trees to navigate for what the connection might be between Greg and Pearl. It needs to be emphasised this is only a theory, so I put a green blob under theory. But in this case, MyHeritage is 100% confident, so I put the green blob under 100%. In the relationship mapped out, and so am I. We've got lots of documents to support the tree. Moving down the screen, and we've got the grey bar indicates we're only part the way down, and we've got common surnames from Greg and Pearl's trees. And we can see the overlap for John Clark, who's Caroline's father. For Hannah Sline, Sline is obviously a phonetic transcription by the Clark who was recording the information. We don't know what the name was really. We don't know anything more about Hannah. You can see that Pearl and Greg's tree agrees on that. Pearl's tree doesn't have Caroline in the list, and that's because on Pearl's tree she spelt the name Clark without an E. And on various records, Caroline's name is sometimes with an E and sometimes without an E when her maiden name is recorded. So these lists aren't going to be perfectly aligned, but they give you some good clues. Next, we continue down and we get shared ancestral places. Places appearing in both trees are highlighted with pink. And so one of them, the one I've got on the screen, is Avoca, Australia. And George Young died in Avoca. And we've both got that fact on our tree. And so it shows up as a shared ancestral place. You can click on the little purple View All Ancestral Places, which I've highlighted with the green arrow. And you get a list by country. But when I did that list, I was a bit surprised because I suddenly had on my tree Ohio, USA, and that was a bit strange to me. So I had a look, and I discovered that there's an Amherst in Ohio, and I hadn't recorded Amherst fully as being Amherst, Victoria, Australia when I put together my tree, so I need to fix my tree. Caroline Young-May-Clark died in Amherst in the hospital there of twisted intestines, poor thing. And it's a small town near Avoca in Victoria, Australia. So, you know, once again, one's trees aren't perfect, and that list can sort of highlight that fact. You can scroll around the map, and I scrolled up to the UK. So in the screenshot that's in the bottom right of your screen, and you'll see that one of the highlighted places we've both got in the tree is Liverpool, Great Britain, and that's where George Young consistently said he came from. He didn't tell us ever who his parents were or anything else, but he did say he came from Liverpool. Shared ancestral places can be the clue that you need to solve a family history mystery with a cousin. I did work with a cousin on just such a problem. The only thing we had was a shared place, and we were able to solve our connection based on that place. And for me, that exercise actually meant taking our tree back 2 more generations too, which was really exciting, and helped explain our connection to a number of DNA matches, American cousins in fact, who descended from that same ancestral couple. But that story I'm going to do another time, not today. So finally, after all that preamble, we scroll down to a match list. So this is the matches, a list of matches that both Greg and Pearl both share DNA with. And this is where it's really interesting in how you connect to other people. So, and one of the things that MyHeritage does really well is it shows you the relationship that both people in the match share with each of those matches. So what we've got is Greg's relationship on the left-hand side and Pearl's on the right-hand side. And so the first match in that list is with Pearl's daughter, and the second with Pearl's son. The third match is with Greg's brother, and the fourth match is with Greg's Aunt Betty. So the matches are by default ordered in the most DNA to the least. So when trying to place a match on the family tree, it's very useful to know not only how you might be related to the match, but also how your shared matches might be related to that match. And I recently solved a mystery for a new match because that match was closely related to another cousin. So I was able to place that match on the tree, and that was really helpful because that match was in fact her unknown father that she was looking for. So knowing both relationships will help you to do that. The green arrow in the top right is highlighting a symbol for triangulation, an indication that Greg, Pearl, and Pearl's daughter all share DNA at the same location. And we'll come back to triangulation later, but just to notice that that's a really interesting hint about your shared DNA. In this case, all 3 of you, how you share DNA. Scrolling further down below the list of matches, we come to family trees. So the tree that you see by default is your matches tree. So this is Pearl's tree as shown on the left-hand side. The display is up to 3rd great-grandparents. You can click at the top to toggle to your tree, so you're able to sort of line them up side by side, but they're not going to be side by side as they are on this screen, but rather you go from one to the other. So I've shown you with the green arrow on the right-hand side, you know, the tree on the right-hand side is Greg's tree. Completeness of your tree is really important. So you need to upload your tree to MyHeritage and link it to your DNA. And you need to have as much as you know as possible. If both matches trees are complete up to a certain number of generations, and they include only one possible path, So in our case, it's the bottom for Pearl. It's going down her maternal line to John Clark and Anna Sline. And for Greg, it's up his paternal side. Then you can be confident about who your shared most common recent ancestors are. If you don't have a complete tree, or if the matches tree is not complete, then there's a possibility that you're related in some other way, on some additional path, and you could be related twice over. You could be double cousins. I usually make the effort to build complete family trees for my matches to eliminate the possibility of being related in more than one way. Sometimes that's not possible, but I try as hard as I can from the information they give. When you're looking at the family tree, you can also click on any person in the tree and get more details for that person from either your own tree or from your matches tree. So I could click on John Tunks and find out what Pearl knows about John Tunks, for example. Further down, you get ethnicity results. So you get to see yours and your matches' ethnicity results. In this case, Greg and Pearl both have very similar ethnicities, mainly heritage from the UK. But sometimes it could be that you and your match share only one particular ethnicity, and there's divergence, and that particular ethnicity could help to point you to where to look for your common ancestry. And at the very bottom of the screen, you get a chromosome browser, and this is really useful information. It shows you where, on which chromosomes, you and your match share DNA. And so we've got Greg and Pearl share 8 segments on various different chromosomes. And because of their shared ancestry, we know that they both inherited this DNA from George and Caroline Young. So the green arrow indicates, again, you could click to find out more information about the chromosome browser, where there's a little tiny question mark there. And I've shown the associated pop-up down the bottom right-hand side. So it just gives you information about what the chromosome browser is showing you. Okay, so that's basically what you see when you go through one of your matches, and you can use the information with your known shared match to explore unknown shared matches. But now I'm going to take you to a different part of Greg's tree, and Greg's mother's grandfather, Henry Sullivan. And he was a mystery for us, and he was born in the early 1860s. And in 1866, when he was about 4 years old, Henry was committed to a Geelong orphanage near Melbourne in Victoria as a neglected child. Greg's mother never knew who Henry's parents were, nor did anybody else. Various cousins have also wondered, and we tried professional researchers experienced in such cases to try and find out, but they couldn't find anything more about him before he was committed to the orphanage. So what you've got on the left-hand side of the screen is the orphanage record, the sort of brief, and it's a bit blurry because it's a film of a microfilm and so on, but one can peer at it and decipher that he was committed in 1866 and so on. His term expired in 1873, but he was recommitted because he was still too young. So he grew up in an orphanage. Lynn, one of Greg's second cousins, shared this photo of Henry as an adult with his wife, his daughter-in-law and granddaughter, Lynn's mother. Lynn's also had her DNA tested, and she and I worked on trying to solve this puzzle together. In recent times, many newspapers have been digitised, and they have a wealth of information. I haven't had any success in finding a report of the legal commitment of Henry in June 1866. But when we looked the month before June, so in May, we found a possibly related court case. And we put together our hypothesis, and we bought certificates and images of certificates and things like that. And we were pretty much convinced that a woman called Matilda was Henry's mother, but we lacked a definite specific document to tie it all together, a document to show that our Henry was the son of Matilda. And I don't think there's actually any written document that exists. But the shared DNA we have provided the link to verify the hypothesis, and I'll now take you through how we arrived at that. So here's a family tree showing Greg and Lynn, and that they are the great-grandchildren of Henry, who is towards the top right. And our theory was that Matilda Sullivan, formerly Hughes, born Derby, born about 1845, was the mother of Henry. She had married William Sullivan, and they had two children, Henry and another infant also called Matilda. There's a lot of Matildas in this story. And the young Matilda died in infancy. And we found an inquest about Matilda, and it gave us a lot of information about this family. Before Matilda, the older one, married, she'd had another son called Eliza Hughes. And that possible half-brother to Henry has descendants. And we wanted to show through DNA the connection between Eliza's descendants and Henry's descendants, and use that DNA to show that Matilda was the mother, the forebear of both those families. It took some time, but eventually a chap with the initials of DJG came up as a DNA match at MyHeritage to Greg and to Lynn. And following messages with the person who administers his DNA, we were able to trace him back to Eliza Hughes and to Matilda. And Greg and Lynn are both half-third cousins to DJG. So here we've got on the left Greg and Lynn's shared matches, the match list, and I've highlighted the match with DJG, which is the third one down. And you can see that he shares 89 centimorgans with Greg and 64 centimorgans with Lynn. And that's compatible with being a third to fourth cousin. He's a half-third cousin, which is sort of the equivalent of a fourth cousin in terms of genetic distance. So to the right of his name on this list is the symbol which shows triangulated DNA. And so I clicked on that triangulated symbol, and you get the screen that shows up on the left of the screenshot that shows up on the left of your screen. And it's a chromosome browser, but it's showing 3 people at this stage. So it's showing Greg and Lynn, and Greg and DJG. And what you can see on chromosome 10 is a triangulated segment. And if you actually click on the triangulated segment, and there's no information to tell you to click there, but you do need to click, can't emphasize that enough. Click and explore and experiment. And you get a pop-up, which I've put the information just down below. And it gives you quite a lot of technical information about that thing. But the thing to look at there is that the segment size is 47.7 centimorgans. It's quite a lot of shared DNA, all on the one segment of the one chromosome. There's no other relationship that could account for the shared DNA. I traced all of the grandparents and great-grandparents of DJG, and the trees of Greg and Lynn are both documented to the great-great-grandparent level. I'm confident that there's no other path that would explain that connection, and that this helps to confirm our hypothesis that Matilda was Henry Sullivan's mother. So, takeaway, really recommend you explore triangulated segments. When you share DNA with 2 other people, they can really help to point to how you connect on your family tree. And also, just when you're exploring MyHeritage, do click on things, even if it's not apparent, and you might find out more information. So there are other descendants of Eliza who've tested their DNA at MyHeritage, but unfortunately their DNA does not triangulate. So Greg will share DNA with them, and Lynn will share DNA with them, but we haven't got matches where all three of us are sharing DNA. So the absence of a DNA match, or the absence of triangulation, unless it's really close cousins or close relationships, it doesn't prove anything. Absence of DNA doesn't mean you don't have a relationship. It just means you did not inherit the same segments from your forebears. So you can have positive proof with more distant relations, but you don't get negative proof if there's DNA missing. Except, as I said, I mean, if you don't share DNA with your sibling, well, then that's a problem. They're not your sibling. But when you get to third cousins and beyond, there is only a chance that you'll both have inherited DNA, and it doesn't mean you're not cousins if you don't share DNA. It just means you didn't inherit the same DNA. Okay, so to finish up, I'm going to have a quick look at some of the other MyHeritage tools that help you to make sense of your DNA. So you can navigate to these tools from the tab at the very top of your screen, and I've highlighted DNA, and if you click on that, you can get there to the tools. And we've got 3 tools here: the Chromosome Browser, Autoclusters, and an Ethnicities map. So firstly, the Chromosome Browser. And we've already had a look at chromosome browsers, but this is another way to get to chromosome browsers and to compare different matches to each other. So you get a display a bit like we've got on the left-hand side, where you can add DNA matches by selecting people who are in those boxes below. And all your matches are there, but you have to scroll down to get them. Once again, these are ordered with the closest matches. So Greg's brother Dennis is his closest match, and his Aunt Betty's his next closest match. And you can just click on the box there, and it adds matches to the array up the top. So I've chosen to look at 4 other matches: Greg, his brother Dennis, his second cousin Lynn, DJG, and Jay, who's the son of DJG. And so we clicked on those boxes, and we can see now the first 10 chromosomes of how we match. And what you see is Greg's brother matches him on lots of places. They don't have identical DNA, they're brothers. They look different and so on, but they share a lot of DNA together. Lynn is the orange bar, and she shares quite a lot of DNA too. The yellow and green bars are DJG and his son Jay. And all 5, so all 4 matches and Greg, still triangulate at chromosome 10. The triangulated segment's slightly smaller because it lost a bit at the edges in various inheritance. The fact that the segment is also shared with Greg's brother and with DJG's son gives us additional confidence that it's an inherited segment. And that's a process called phasing. But that's really a talk for another day because that's getting quite technical. But the fact that quite a few people are sharing that gives us more confidence about how it's been inherited. And a segment of over 30 centimorgans in size is a good size segment. The next tool you can choose from is called Autoclusters. So Autoclusters is a very, very nifty grouping tool which shows how your different matches cluster together, share DNA with each other. This is a tool that's offline, so you need to generate the report, and you generate by clicking the purple button, which I've highlighted with green, and you're emailed the report. And I've shown you the email that I received in the top right, and attached to the email there's a zip folder with 3 files: a README document, a spreadsheet, and an HTML file. So I've shown that list of files down the bottom right. So the most exciting bit is the HTML file, and you put that together and the clusters come together quite magically, and you get a list of 100 names in this case, and they're diagonally arranged down the screen in glorious colours, and there's some grey dots as well. So I've pixelated out most of the names for privacy, but I've left in Pearl, another second cousin Janet, and also a second cousin, the second cousin Lynn, whose matches we looked at before. So when you look at the display, if you know some of your matches, then that helps to tell you about the other people who are in that cluster. So I know that if Pearl's in the orange cluster, then the other matches are probably going to be around the Young family. And similarly with Janet, she's related on Greg's cross branch of the tree, and so those are probably going to be cross relations. And Lynn is a Sullivan relation, and so that cluster that she's associated with is probably going to be connected to our Sullivan, our shared Sullivan forebears. The grey dots that appear are indications that the match on that line, or that row, because it's a matrix, appear in other clusters as well. So there's a predominant cluster and then they also share. So you can get a sense then from which clusters are related to others by looking at the grey dots and seeing some of the connections. Once again, you need to scroll down, and it's not obvious that you need to scroll down. You get this pretty display and you think that's it, but wait, there's more, and you scroll down. So I'm showing you what you get when you scroll down on the right-hand side. So you learn immediately under the pretty diagram that we have 100 matches shown. They range from 25 to 400 centimorgans shared DNA. And the shared matches must share at least 10 centimorgans to appear as a shared match. There are also some details about those matches in each cluster, including the notes you might have made about the match, and we'll talk about notes again in a moment. I usually add notes when I've messaged somebody. I also note how they might be connected. It's very useful for me to have the notes in this report, because I can see them together, and this helps to make sense about what I already might know about those matches in each group, and it gives me lots of ideas about which matches to look at next. So in the email, you also received a spreadsheet. So it's a list of names with the identifiers, how many centimorgans you share, and a hyperlink to the trees. So you could take this spreadsheet and you could use it to make notes and work more with the matches. But you can also click on the hyperlink and you get to the tree that we saw earlier, for example, Pearl's tree, that your match is uploaded to MyHeritage. The README document just tells you about the results, but it gives you the statistics of the results, and it tells you also about some people who are excluded from the results because they did not have shared matches. So there are people who would have fitted within the range of 25 to 400 centimorgans, but because they didn't share any matches, they're not included in the report. So this is a brief overview of auto-clustering. It's a fascinating tool. It's a really good way to look at your shared matches and the matches they in turn share that have been grouped together, and then you can learn more about your cousins. Lastly, you can look at your ethnicity, and for some people that's really important, and you can compare it to other MyHeritage users. In this case, I've shown Greg's ethnicity against the MyHeritage users from Australia. And for people who've tested in Australia, most people who've tested their DNA at MyHeritage have ancestry going back to the UK and Europe. It doesn't actually reflect the ethnicity of Australians. It just means people who are into genealogy are generally connected to the UK and Europe. And Greg's 46% Irish, Scottish and Welsh is similar to lots of other Australians. So looking again back to the screen that we had with Pearl, when you review any given DNA match, what I wanted to draw your attention to was the contact button and the notes button. So the contact button I've put with a green arrow, and you can use that to use the MyHeritage messaging system. Really encourage you to message your matches and say, just a really gentle, short introduction to indicate that you're interested. Not everybody's interested in communicating back with you, but if you reach out, then hopefully they will reach back to you. And the MyHeritage messaging system, it doesn't share any more information than you have been willing to share through MyHeritage. So it doesn't give you email address. It doesn't allow people to stalk you or anything like that. You just are totally within the environment of MyHeritage. You'll get an email saying there's been a message, but you won't get the details of that message in your email. You have to click into MyHeritage to see that message. I also keep notes, which I've highlighted in the top with the top orange arrow. It's just a little notes icon. In this case, it's purple because I actually have notes for Pearl. And I usually put in the notes if I've messaged somebody and when I messaged them, so then I can sort of say, oh yes, I did message them 2 months ago. Maybe I'll send a reminder or check whether they've replied or something like that. I also keep track of how I think I might be related to them. If I've been in contact with that match at other times, in past researches, when we've been putting together the family tree, for example, they're a known cousin, I'll put that into the notes screen too, if I need reminding. So MyHeritage gives you lots of tools to work with your shared matches to discover more about your family history and add to your family tree with the help of your DNA. You just need to use those tools and click and scroll everywhere. So DNA supplements your documented tree, might help to confirm it. Working with DNA doesn't replace building your tree with documents. But when exploring your DNA at MyHeritage, I urge you to scroll down because it's not always obvious, but you do need to scroll down. I urge you to click on your screen, all over your screen. Don't be afraid, you're not going to break it. Particularly click on the small question marks, but elsewhere too. So for example, on the triangulated match, it might pop up with some more information about that triangulation. There's often more below out of sight. Upload your family tree and share it with your matches. Working with your DNA matches relies on you sharing your information and them sharing it back with you to make those connections. And the easiest way is if you share the family tree, it becomes more obvious how you might connect. Do contact your matches through the messaging system, and of course also reply when they contact you. And keep notes. Genetic genealogy is a slow process. I've been using MyHeritage DNA now for 4 years. So you go back to matches and you think, what do I already know? The notes will help you keep in the front of your mind how you might have contacted the person, what you already know about the connection, and so on. So it's very useful to have a brief note when you revisit your results. So I hope I've explained to you how the DNA tools at MyHeritage can be used to confirm and extend what you already know about your family history by working with your DNA matches. I'm happy to take questions, but happy researching otherwise. Okay, so...
Anne, thank you so much. That was a great walkthrough of the MyHeritage DNA matches and all that's involved with that, with triangulation and all that, auto-clustering and everything. I'm going to take the screen back now and do some announcements and door prizes, and then I'll bring you back on in just a couple minutes to do a Q&A. Okay?
Very good.
So I'll be right back. All right. Our next MyHeritage series webinar, this webinar today is part of our special series sponsored by MyHeritage. And our next MyHeritage series webinar is Use MyHeritage Records to Quickly Discover and Write the Story of Your Ancestors. And that is going to be by Devin Noel Lee. And you can register for that at familytreewebinars.com/MyHeritageWebinars. All right, now we need to give out some door prizes before we do our Q&A with Anne. Our first door prize is a 1-year MyHeritage Complete plan, and this is the best plan that you can get at MyHeritage. This has both the Premium Plus Family Site subscription and the data subscription. So the Premium Plus Family Site subscription allows you unlimited size capacity for your family trees. It gives you priority email support. It gives you enhanced smart matching, the consistency checker, allows you to contact other site managers. So that's all related to your family tree. And then the data subscription, well, that's all the records. So when you're doing research, you want to look at city directories and census records and vital records and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's what's included in the data subscription. So I'm going to pick somebody from our live audience right here, right now. And that winner, we are heading into winter here in Boston, but that's not what we're talking about. Our winner is Pat Dowdy. So congratulations, Pat. You are the winner of a 1-year MyHeritage Complete plan subscription. I'm just writing your name down. I will be contacting you after the webinar, so be sure to be on the lookout for an email from me. And our second door prize is a MyHeritage DNA kit. And of course, we've been talking about DNA throughout this whole webinar. And it would be great if, I'm curious, how many of you haven't tested your DNA yet? Is there anybody out there who hasn't tested yet? You can put a note in the chat. I'm just curious. All right, so what I'd like to do for this one, if you would like to win a MyHeritage DNA kit, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. So what you do is in your GoToWebinar control panel on the left side, there's a little icon that looks like a hand. Just press that. That'll raise your hand in the back end here for me to see who would like to have a DNA kit. And I am going to go down here. And the winner of this is Tom Stuhler. So congratulations, Tom. You have just won a MyHeritage DNA test kit. And I am writing your name down as well, so you should be on the lookout for an email from me later today. Okay, let's bring Anne back. And we will do a couple questions and answers. All right, Anne, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let's see. Corinne, she asked this question very early on, wanted to get her question in right away. And she wanted to know about tips to deal with those matches who don't answer when you send a message. Any suggestions for her?
It's tricky. So no, not everybody gets back to you. I wonder sometimes if they don't see that there's a message, because, for example, my Gmail organizes messages sometimes into updates and things like that, and you don't check them. So maybe they don't see that there's a message. So you can try again. You could try to see if they're in some other place. If you that maybe they're on WikiTree, for example, or something like that, so that you could connect with them that way. But there are some people who don't want to get back to you. There are some relatives who won't test their DNA when you ask them very nicely. So I have a great Aunt Charlotte, and she didn't want to test her DNA. The answer with that is you can't bully people. You can't make them do things. You have to accept graciously that they don't want to have their DNA tested, or they don't want to communicate with you. And you need to move on and work with the people who do want to get back to you. When I contact the messages, I keep the message really short, and I just say, we share DNA. I make sure that I communicate who the test kit is and who's administering it. So, as you know, I administer my husband Greg's DNA, and I also administer some cousins. So you need to, if you write to me, you need to say, I share DNA with Greg, and I'd like to find out more, and I think the connection might be Sullivan relatives or something like that. So keep the message really short and say, I would really like to work with you on our shared ancestry. So don't write a very long message, because that can be off-putting, and people say, oh, I don't know what to reply. You just reach out and say, would you like to work with me on our shared ancestry? So that's the basic. Yes, not everybody does reply, and that's frustrating, but you need to move on and work with those who do reply.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? The whole communicating with other people, it can be so frustrating, like you say. Sometimes it's just a matter of like they're not ready to research the line that you're working on, and then
yes.
they email you like 3 years later because now they're working on that line. It's just
it can be that,
yeah.
And they discover the messages later. So I do try more than once. I'd leave it at least 1 month before I try again. So maybe, as I said, they missed the first email about the message in their inbox. But so I do give it one more try, but after that, I let it go.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. Laura wants to know, is there a way to confirm the theory of relativity so that they merge, so that they match?
So you can't make a theory of relativity appear. So MyHeritage generates them, and it generates them from available information. So you're more likely to get theories of relativity if you have your tree in place. So if you want to prompt a theory to appear, when the theory appears, so like the one that I showed you with between Greg and Pearl, you need to go back and look for documents that support that theory. So if that theory is new to you, if it's not something that you've already got on your tree, so if we hadn't worked out that John Young had a sister called Maria, and she had a daughter called Ivy, who in turn had a daughter called Pearl, you then put together that on your tree and research that he did indeed have a sister, Maria, who married John Tunks, and John and Maria had a daughter, Ivy. Pearl's a living person. She's born in less than the last 100 years. In Australia, there's strict privacy laws, which might make it quite hard to find out more information about Pearl, but you could certainly find out information about people who are more than 100 years of age. So, yes, you need to do your own research to confirm that theory with documents as far as possible.
So are you saying that the bigger your tree and the more records you have connected to your tree, the more likely you'll get some theories of relativity?
I believe so, yes. Okay. It's certainly a start. If you have no tree at all connected to your DNA results, you're less likely to get a theory of relativity, because MyHeritage has nothing to start their algorithms with. Mm-hmm. Even a small tree will help. So anything you know. And so in the case of adoptees, for example, they might not know very much about their family. But if you know even a smidgen of information, put that in so that the algorithms can work with that and look for other records to connect you. And of course, also your matchers can look at what you know, and possibly help to reach out to you and make those matches with you, those connections with you.
All right. John is asking, how do you know whether the match is on the maternal or the paternal side of the family?
That really comes down to shared matches. In the case of Pearl, I know that it's a paternal match because she matches on Greg's young forebears, and that's his paternal side. In the case of Lynn, I know that's maternal. She matches on the Sullivan side, and so I can trace that through Greg's mother's side. So shared matches will give you the clue. So if it was a new match, but they shared DNA with Lynn as well as with Greg, then I would say, that's probably a maternal match. It could be that you could be related more than once to your matches. I've got one match on Greg's, and it appears to be a relatively close match, and it matches on both a cousin on both his father's side and a cousin on both his mother's side. It sounds to me as though it matches twice over. And I haven't yet quite worked out the connection, but it could be a way back. So it can be confusing, but the short answer is look for the cousins, look for the matches with the cousins you know to start to work out how they fit into your tree.
Okay, so look at your closest matches and identify which side of the tree is on, and based on who they match, you can say that those people are connected to that same side of the tree, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. So a number of people wanted to know, how do you link your DNA to your tree? Is that done in the DNA settings or in the tree settings?
That's done on the DNA settings. And sorry, that probably would have been a good thing to show. So you upload your tree, or you develop your tree, build your tree in MyHeritage. When you have your DNA, then you can choose which person on your tree to link them to, and the tree will appear. So yes, when you add your DNA, test your DNA at MyHeritage, you're invited to show which person on your tree that DNA links to.
Okay, so you just need to make sure that you or your father or your cousins are on your tree so that you can link them to the DNA kit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So hopefully, I'll just put the link to some other MyHeritage webinars in the chat, and there may be other webinars in the Legacy Library that will go into that topic for you guys. All right, let's see here. Let's see. Laura's asking, well, we already covered that. It's theory of relativity. Let's see, context of matches. Oh, okay. Sue wants to know, do the matches need to have paid subscriptions to receive and or send messages back? So do you happen to know?
I don't know. No, I am a paid member. I think to use the tools, you need to pay a fee of about $29 if you upload your DNA to MyHeritage. You do need to pay a small fee to unlock the tools. I'm not sure about the messaging, though, because you would hope that the messaging would be available even if you haven't paid that fee. Certainly to receive messages.
Yeah, and
so
just to be clear, the fee is just for people who upload their DNA to MyHeritage.
Upload their DNA.
Right, so if you bought a kit directly from MyHeritage, you don't have to pay that fee.
You don't pay that fee, no, you
because you already paid for the kit. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just scanning here to see if there are any more questions. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Linda's asking, I've done DNA from 2 different testing companies, and I don't remember which one I uploaded. How do I tell what is the source? Does it really matter that you need to know what this... So say you did like 23andMe or Ancestry, and so Linda's saying she doesn't remember which one of those companies she would have uploaded to MyHeritage. Does it really matter which one you uploaded?
I don't think it does. I think that FTDNA, family tree DNA, and MyHeritage are quite closely associated, and they both use swabs, for example, and their chips are similar. And so I think that the detail that you get from that is more likely to produce more matches than if you upload from, say, Ancestry, which uses a different chip. But for the genealogically significant matches, the closer matches, I don't think it will matter at all. So I don't think you need to upload multiple times from different places or anything like that. That will only confuse people because they'll see you more than once. So I think relax and work with the upload that you've done. And your important matches, those who share significant amounts of DNA with you, will show up no matter where you tested.
All right, Barb has a note here, which may help Linda. Barb says, she did both family tree DNA and Ancestry, and if you go in, it shows the comparison with a test that starts with AN or FT, so you know which one they are talking about. So, and Stephen is saying that too, that Ancestry, MyHeritage puts a prefix on the kit ID, which tells you the source of the uploaded kit. So, Barb and Stephen, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you adding that. So, there we go. There we go, Linda. That's the answer. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Any last thoughts for our audience, Anne?
No. I think that the tools of MyHeritage are marvelous, and I encourage everybody to explore them and to connect with their cousins, and I hope they have success. Happy researching.
Well, thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring this series of webinars, and thanks to our speaker, Anne Young, for waking up way too early in Australia to present to us today. Thanks to all of you from all around the world who've joined us today for this webinar. We hope to see you the next time when Devin Noel Lee will be here. And that's it for this time. Hope to see you again. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.